Good morning, everybody, and welcome. My name is Dirk Hogeboom. Thank you for the introduction. And today I will walk you through some of the key results of the research we have done. So, without any further ado, I will start presenting the key findings. So basically, we have run a dedicated survey for Europacable, and we targeted electrical sector stakeholders. Before I start with the results, just very briefly, I'll explain what we do. We are a market research agency specializing in doing research for the construction, installation, and home improvement market sectors. We do this with a team of 70 people, and we are fully market specialized. If you look at our clients, we work throughout the business value chain of construction, and more specifically, also for the installation market segments. Now, for the topic at hand. So we were asked to look at some key elements to evaluate and monitor the knowledge, application, and use of CPR in the European electrical sector. And the way we did this is that we did 1,311 online interviews all over Europe. So countries like Italy, France, Spain, Germany, Greece, and many more were involved in this study. And we reached out to various target groups: electrical installers, engineers, property developers, distribution, consultancy, and of course also manufacturers. And we have done this research in 2021, where you will see the results shortly. And we also have results for 2022, bearing in mind that the data collection is still in progress, but still we can already show you some comparisons. So for today, I would like to take you through the knowledge of CPR classes in electrical cables, the responsibility for CPR implementation, the actual CPR application, and some thoughts about non-compliant cables. Now, for the first topic at hand, knowledge of CPR classes in electrical cables. We asked the question, to what extent do you agree with the following statement? And the statement was, I know very well which CPR classes for cables are relevant in my country. Again, this question was asked to 1,311 professionals for the installation sector. Now, when we look at the answers, they could answer with I agree, I partly agree, I disagree, or I'm not aware of CPR for cables. Now, a clear outcome obviously is that more than 80% of the European stakeholders in the installation industry are aware of the CPR classes of electrical cables. In fact, if we look at the 2022 results, we see that this group is increasing. The group that agrees with this statement has grown, and the group that disagrees has shrinked, and also the group that's not aware of CPR for cables has decreased. So over the span of 1 year, we see a slow increase of the knowledge of CPR classes in electrical cables. It's already, of course, on a quite high level. Now, we also asked another question. To what extent do you agree with the following statement? As a professional in the electrical sector, I know how to apply CPR for cables. Now, if we look at these answers, again, the first thing that really pops in mind is that a very large group completely agrees or agrees with the statement. In 2021, it was 70%, it increased to 71% in 2022. But still, 20% of all of the respondents, of all of these 1,311 professionals in the installation industry, are not very sure how to apply CPR on electrical cables. So still 1 in 5 professionals is not very sure how to apply CPR on electrical cables. Now, we also ask some questions about responsibilities for CPR implementation. And the first question we asked was, how do you fulfill your responsibilities in fire safety for cables? Now, they had a couple of answer options. And the answer option that was most commonly chosen was, I follow the indications of the national regulation on fire prevention. 52% of all interviewees choose this answer option. Then another 30% mentioned, I use the national regulation as a guideline, but I always consider the overall fire risk. And 11% mentioned, I try to find the balance between fire safety and cost efficiency. Now, we also asked them the question, where do you search for requirement information regarding the construction products regulation? So 52%, the vast majority, mentioned the website of manufacturers. And this is not a really strange outcome because we conduct many researches amongst various stakeholders in the construction and installation industry, architects, contractors, installers. And what we clearly see is that the manufacturer is getting a more important role in advising the professionals in the construction industry on a various range of topics, including construction product regulations. Of course, we asked this question to professionals in the installation segment, and we also see that the Europacable website was mentioned by 24%. 17% mentioned discussions with distributors and wholesalers, so basically the point of sale. Now, finally, we asked them the question, what information regarding the construction product regulation, CPR, do you use or download? So the vast majority, 71%, mentioned product data sheets. 40% mentioned declaration of performance. And 23% mentioned harmonized European standards. Now, obviously, as you can see by these percentages, they were able to choose multiple answers. But it's quite clear that there's a clear number one mentioned by the most, which is product data sheets. And again, this is not so much an outlier if we look at the total construction industry and all of the researches we've done. We clearly see that they still tend to use the product data sheets more often than, for example, declarations of performance or harmonized European standards. Now we've been talking about, let's say, some more background questions. Do they know CPR? What are the key elements? Where do they look for the information? We also asked them the question, to what degree has CPR been applied in your projects? And we asked them to indicate a percentage where CPR was applied of the total projects they do. So the answer given was that in 3/4 of all projects, CPR has been applied. So in 3/4 of all projects, CPR has been applied. And there were many reasons they could give. I've listed here the top 3 reasons for why they use or specify CPR compliant cables. And the number 1 and 2 are closely together. National regulations, 65% mentioned this. Fire safety, another 65%. So the idea of fire safety is as high top of mind as the national regulations. And then another 43% stated clients' safety. Again, they were able to choose multiple reasons for specifying or using CPR compliant cables. Now, it's good to hear, of course, that CPR has already been applied in 3/4 of the total projects, but we also started to ask some questions about non-CPR compliant cables. And the key question we ask is, do you think that non-compliant cables are used in your market? And now we see some interesting outcomes. Around 60% of European stakeholders believe that non-compliant cables are used. 60% believe that non-compliant cables are used. And if we compare the 2021 results with the preliminary 2022 results, we see that it's more or less on the same level. And I think this is quite important. Of course, this question was asked if they think, so it's more a question of what are the feelings within the market. But what we can clearly see in the overall construction industry, that it takes some time for regulations to really penetrate into the market. Furthermore, we are looking at a very conservative industry. And in a conservative industry, people tend to use what they've always used. And it's also an industry where margins are quite slim, especially for installers and contractors. So if there are areas where they could cut some costs, typically this tends to happen. And obviously, a question would be, well, if they feel that non-compliant cables are used in the market, where are these cables coming from? Obviously, you could think of some parallel import Chinese products, but also, of course, using cables that were not intended to be used for construction purposes. So I think here there is still a very a big step forward to be made. We also asked, if non-compliance cables are used, do you know where to report this? If you see that this happens, do you know where to report this? And clearly a large group, especially in 2021, said, no, I do not know this. 72% mentioned, no, I do not know if non-compliant cables are used, where to report that. 28% said yes. The preliminary results for 2022 show that it's grown slightly to 32% who knows where they need to report the use of non-compliant cables, but still 68% are unaware where to report this. So again, there are still some significant steps that need to be made. So this concludes some insights of the results we collected for Europacable. Maybe it's good to say that this research, of course, was done in full compliance of all of the market research regulations. And I think with the update in 2022, it will be very interesting to see the full developments over time. Thank you very much for your attention.